Okay, thank you very much. So for today, I want us to begin from risk management plan. Unless you have a question from the previous class or from the previous
No,
okay, great. So let's look at the risk management plan. If you remember very well, we talked about the project management plan or the project plan. I don't know if at all you can remember what a project plan is. We said it's a document, right?
yes,
Which explains everything to do with how the project is going to be handled.
yes,
So even the risk management plan, it's a document. What I've noticed is that most of these books, as long as they are called a plan, we have a book called the M&E, Monitoring and Evaluation Plan. It is also a document that explains how monitoring and evaluation functions are going to be carried out. Project management plan, it is a document also that explains how the project is going to run. And for risk management plan, this is like a document, but it's more like a section in the document of the project plan, which explains how risks are going to be handled. So the risk management plan tells you how you are going to handle risk in your project. It documents how you assess the risk, who is responsible for doing it, and how often you do risk planning. That is, since you have to meet about risk planning with your team throughout the project. You remember what we said? You cannot afford to wait up until your project or the strategy that you have set. At some point, you may find out that they are not working. That's why we said the project management plan is a document that you can always change when you see that the approach that you are actually using is not working. The same with the risk. An event where you see that there is a particular risk that has come, the team, you always have to revise ND to see what has come up and how best it should be handled. Some risks are technical, like components that might turn out to be difficult to use. Others, they are external, that is like changes in the market or even problems with the weather. So they are about, we can categorize this into categories. We have external risks and the technical risk or internal risks. Like the technical risks where some components or some things that you are using in the particular project. It could be the equipment that you are supposed to use in the process or as you do your work. They turn out to be difficult to handle, or maybe they break down, or just anything to happen to them. For external, those are some of the risks that are beyond or that are caused by the external forces like the weather or changes in the market. So it is very much important to come up with guidelines to help you figure out how big the risk potential impact could be. What we mean by potential impact is you would want to assess how each and every risk, what impact could it have or can it have on your project. You know, risks, they differ. Some, they are very much harmful. Some, in an event where they happen, the damage they can cause to the project is little or is less compared to some. So the impact tells you how much damage the risk would cause to your project. Many projects classify impact on the scale from minimal to severe, or from very low to very high. So you need to classify your risks in terms of the potential impact. So simply to say, you can say, what impact does this particular risk have? And the classifications could be put on the scale from minimal to severe, or from very low to very high. I think we are going to deal with this as we progress. So your risk management plan should give you a scale to help you figure out the probability of the risk. Some risks, they are very likely, others aren't. So let's look at the risk management process. How is the process done? So managing risks on project is a process that includes risk assessment and a mitigation strategy for those risks. So there are two things that are involved in the process of risk management. There is risk assessment, where you are assessing the risks that are available, and a mitigation strategy. That is the other side, where you are providing the solution
Okay.
on those particular identified risks in the risk assessment. You wanted to ask something?
Oh, I'm saying that, okay. I'm just agreeing with what you are saying.
Okay, great. So by risk assessment, I hope you have noted that when you are talking about risk management process, the process itself of managing a risk, it is divided into two parts. There is the identification side, where we say it is risk assessment, and the mitigation side, which we are saying mitigation strategy for those risks. So after you have identified in the risk assessment, each risk which has been identified, we need to provide solution to it, which is mitigation strategy. So that you should note. The two,
Okay.
yes, the two things involved in risk management process. So let's look at risk assessment. So risk assessment, it includes both the identification of the potential risk and the evaluation of the potential impact of the risk. Again, when it comes to risk assessment, it looks again at two things. Since you are trying to find out the risks which are available or which can happen, not only are we pointing them out, by identifying them, but we are also trying to identify which ones of those that have been identified have potential impact. So it's like you would want to assess, out of these risks which we have, which one have more impact on our project. So you would categorize them again, like we had said earlier, that on the scale of either very low to very high, or severe, or from minimal to severe. That is when you classify them in the terms of, or in terms of the impact a particular risk can have on the project. So you should bear this in mind, that when we are talking about risk assessment, we are also talking about two things. We are talking about the risk identification and the evaluation of the potential impact of that particular risk. We are done there. So we have looked at the one part of the management process. Which part have we looked at so far? I just want to see if at all you are following. Hello? Hello? Mr. Vincent, is my question clear? Okay. So I said, when we are looking at risk management process, we are looking at two things. The identification side, which is the risk assessment, and the solution side, which is the mitigation strategy. So when we look at the risk assessment, there are also two things which we are looking at. We are looking at identifying the potential risk and the impact or the degree of each of those, the degree of the impact of each of those risks which have been identified. That is one thing, or one part of the risk management process, which was the risk assessment. Now let's come to the mitigation strategy, which brings us to risk mitigation plan. The other part, are we good to go so far? Are you clear? Hello? Hello? It could be network. Okay. Let's look at the risk mitigation plan. So a risk mitigation plan is designed to eliminate or minimize the impact of the risk. So the risk mitigation plan, it is designed to eliminate or minimize the impact of the risk events or occurrence that have a negative impact on the project. So it is the, when we are looking at the mitigation plan, it is the two things which we are looking at, though actually not necessarily two things, but we are trying to eliminate, if we cannot eliminate, but at least we should minimize the impact of that particular risk which has been identified.
Okay.
Yes. I don't know if at all you are good. We are good to go so far, or have lost you somewhere. I couldn't get you along the way.
No, we are together. We are
Sorry,
together. We
we
are
are together.
together. Yes,
Great,
yes.
great. So identifying risk is both a creative and a disciplined process. It's something which really needs to brainstorm a lot and to put heads together. So the creative process, when we are talking about you identifying a potential risk, we are saying it is both creative and disciplined process. Now, the creative process side, it includes brainstorming sessions where the team is asked to create a list of everything that could go wrong. You have this particular project that you are working on. What would you do? You could, or you would put your team to guess, or to think of, not necessarily guessing, to think of whatever thing which can make the project fail, whatever thing which can go wrong. Let each and every member participate in writing whatever thing they think can make the project fail to succeed. So all ideas are welcome at this stage, with the evaluation of the idea coming later. We're still on the risk identification. So we said identifying a risk is both creative and disciplined. And on the creative side, that's where you put everything together. People are bringing decisions. And on the discipline, the process side, or on the discipline side, here it involves using checklists of potential risks and evaluating the likelihood that those events might happen on the project. So it is where now you pick these already identified risks. Now you want to find out by putting them on the scale to see, you are trying to evaluate now the likelihood of them occurring. So some companies in the industry develop risk checklists based on the experiences from the past. These checklists can be helpful to the project manager and the project team in identifying both specific risks on the checklist and expanding the thinking of the team. So the past experience of the project team, the project experience within the company, and experts in the industry can be valuable, or can be a valuable resource for identifying potential risks of the project. So identifying sources of risks by category is another method by exploring potential risks. For example, you could categorize your risks. If you want to identify them well, you put them as some, you identified, we have technical, cost, schedule, client, contractual, weather, financial, political, environment, people. You put everything, and then you want to see from each, from the technical, what technical risk can arise during the course of this project. So people will think through. This will really help you to think smart and organize things in a simpler way. So you can use the same framework as a work breakdown for developing the risk breakdown structure, RBS. So an RBS organizes the risks that have been identified into categories using tables with increasing levels to detail to the right I was saying the RBS, it organizes the risks that have been identified in two categories using a table with increasing levels of detail to the right. The people category can be subdivided into different types of risk associated with the people. So here is an example of what we are talking about here. So here is the risk of John's move from Copperbelt to Lusaka. What risks were there? So in John's move, John makes a list of things that might go wrong with his project and uses his breakdown structure or as a guide. So have you seen when, if at all, you can see from there, the tasks and risks. So the contacts of Dion and Carita, the risk of those contacts are that Dion can back out, Carita can back out. What is the risk of us having class tomorrow? Hello? Hello? Okay. So those are that was the example of John. We have risk evaluation. Risk evaluation comes on the side where you want now to evaluate the impact which each and every risk may have on your particular on your project. So after the potential risks have been identified, the project team then evaluates each risk based on the probability that the risk event will occur and the potential loss associated with it. Not all risks are equal. That's one thing which you know. Not all risks are what? Are equal. Some risks they are severe, some they are not. And some risks are more likely to happen. Some they are not. So it is very much important that the risks are evaluated. So having a criteria to determine high impact risks can help narrow the focus on a few critical risks that require mitigation. So the next time as we join class, I want us to begin from here, and then we will summarize everything and end from there. We'll start from risk evaluation, trying to figure out how you could tell or how you can pick the risk that you have identified, how you can pick or how you can know which one you should take more serious, depending on the degree of impact it can have on the project as well as its likelihood of occurrence. Unless there's a question, I would like us to end here.